Welcome to the Love Story with Lisa channel. Today, we're bringing you a brand new story. The stepmother plotted to demote me to a concubine's daughter. Did she think I'd submit? I burned down the house, faked my death, and joined the army. Blurb: a high monk read my fortune. The young lady's fate is thin. She is unlikely to live long. Only by relying on others and living humbly can she find peace. My stepmother immediately began coughing. Grand Master, you go too far. Then, using my supposed ill-fated destiny as an excuse, she demoted me from the status of a principal daughter to that of a concubine's daughter. She forbade me from studying or learning the arts of a lady, intent on raising me as a worthless nobody. So I snuck into the Imperial Academy and listened to lectures in secret. When the teacher discovered me, he declared boldly, "Do not be picky, learn what you can, learn what is good." On the last day of my studies, I set my bedroom on fire, faked my death, and ran straight to Yenmen Pass. I became a new recruit in the Xuanji military camp. 5 years later, I returned to the capital. The emperor, my imperial uncle, by title, laughed and asked, "My beloved general, I have a daughter. Would you like her?" I answered with great care, "Could your majesty also include an imperial token of immunity from death?" Begin of story. I have a mother who loves to boast. She used to say she had once wielded a silver spear and roamed across the 4 corners of the world. I asked her why she couldn't break through the 4 square walls inside the Yan Wang Manor. She said she had once driven foreign tribes back 3,000 li. I asked her why she couldn't even out-argue a little concubine competing for favor. In the end, my mother grew furious. "Yi Liqiu, I don't need a filial child. I just need you to keep your mouth shut." At times like these, there was always a nanny beside my mother, a stern-faced woman who would remind her, "Your ladyship, please watch your words." Everyone knows that the princess consort of Yen is not favored. Indeed, as the legitimate princess consort, she shared her courtyard with only 3 people, my mother, me, and that nanny. I detested that nanny. She was always restraining my mother, and yet she seemed more like the mistress of the house than my mother did. Whenever things got out of hand, she would pull out the Empress Dowager's gold token, a gift of authority, and use it as a threat. If her ladyship has any grievances, she may seek the Empress Dowager's arbitration. As if the Empress Dowager would actually arbitrate anything. She would just send a decree to the frontier, chiding my maternal grandfather for raising a child without proper discipline. I secretly gave the nanny a nickname, Nanny Cannot. Because the phrase she uttered most every single day was, "The princess consort cannot. Cannot take 3 bites of the same dish. Cannot oversleep past 1 incense stick of time. Cannot spend too long in the outhouse." I once asked my mother why she never went to find father. She froze with her back to me. Later, I came to understand, my mother's marriage to my father had been nothing but a scheme. My mother, Shen Pingxiang, was the principal daughter of the Zhenguogang Manor. At 12 she had gone to the battlefield, at 15 she had driven foreign tribes back 3,000 li, shaking the entire realm. At that time, the reigning emperor, Yi Beichen, was still crown prince. He and my mother had grown up as childhood sweethearts. The late emperor had once teased Yi Beichen, asking whether he wished for an imperial arranged marriage. He had answered clearly, "Being granted a marriage by the emperor is naturally a supreme honor, but I only wish for Shen Pingxiang to nod willingly. If she disagrees, I would rather let her be free." The late emperor laughed loudly and praised him as a hopeless romantic. My mother returned to the capital and smiled in agreement. But just before the wedding, the succession struggle between the crown prince and Yan Wang reached its climax. Yan Wang used underhanded schemes to besmirch my mother's honor. The entire capital witnessed it, my mother, clothes disheveled, running out of the Yan Wang manor, while Yan Wang chased behind her, calling out hoarsely, "Pingxiang, don't go." Everyone said my mother had seduced Yan Wang, only to be found lacking in chastity. Recalling that she had once been captured by enemy forces, everyone assumed they had uncovered the truth. The betrothal between the crown prince and my mother was annulled. Yan Wang then magnanimously declared he was willing to take my mother as his wife. My mother, who had never bowed her head before anyone, suffered deeply. She went to beg Yi Beichen for help. She only needed the city guards to delay their shift change by 1 incense stick's time, and she could flee. Yi Beichen closed his eyes and said nothing. My mother stepped back and begged again, or you could take me as a concubine. I will not disgust you. I only need a few days in the Eastern Palace to wait for the storm to pass, then I will fake my death and return to Yanmen Pass. I will never appear again. Beneath the moonlight, Yi Beichen gently reached out to tuck a strand of hair behind my mother's ear, yet the words he spoke were colder than ice and snow. No. You cannot leave. You must enter the Yan Wang manor in my sister's place, to watch over Yan Wang. Only when you are there will my sister be at ease. My mother stared at him in silence for a long moment, her voice cracking. So all those sweet words before were false? Yi Beichen smiled faintly. In time, they will be true. Once Yan Wang dies, wait for the right opportunity, and you will be an imperial consort. My mother finally saw through the false faces of everyone around her. Behind the crown prince stood the civil ministers, behind Yan Wang stood the military generals. Lord Zhen Guogong only guarded the frontier and had never chosen a side. The crown prince's declarations of love were likely nothing more than a desire for the military power held by my grandfather. How could Yan Wang allow him to have his way? Thus my mother became the sole sacrifice. On the wedding day, from the moment she stepped into the bridal palanquin, my mother laughed loudly without pause. Even during the ritual bowing ceremony, she did not stop. Everyone said my mother had gone mad. They said it was lucky the crown prince hadn't married her, otherwise the future empress would have been a madwoman. They said Yan Wang was so deeply devoted that he was even willing to marry a woman who had lost her purity. How moving. From that day on, Shen Pingxiang became the princess consort of Yan. Who still remembered that she had once galloped on horseback, wielding a spear, conquering the world. Who still cared that she had once stood shoulder to shoulder with heroes, never inferior to any man. After I was born, father never set foot in my mother's courtyard again. He devoted himself entirely to his beloved, consort by Jean, going so far as to hand over all household management to her. My mother grew more despondent by the day. When I turned 5, she finally could no longer endure it. She fell gravely ill and never rose again. Bai Jin stood before my mother's sickbed and said through gritted teeth, "When you die, I will be the princess consort of Yan. What if you are the only female general in all of Dezhou? In the end, you still lost to me, Shen Pingxiang. Do you really think no one knows about the evil deeds you've committed?" My mother had no reaction. She looked at no one and paid attention to nothing. Even when I wept and called out, "Mother," she only slightly moved her eyes. Until the night before my mother passed away, I remember it clearly. It was a night of heavy snowfall. Suddenly she had energy, standing in the snow-covered courtyard performing a spear dance for me. the pear blossom spear. Nanny Cannot was afraid she would hurt herself in a fit of sadness, one of the rare times she stayed silent and said nothing. As the final thrust came down, my mother coughed up blood, murmuring, "I have never lost to anyone. I only lost to fate." Right after my mother died of illness, the emperor announced he was ill and dismissed court. My grandfather rushed back from Yenmen Pass, hoping to see his daughter one last time, but father said my mother had died of tuberculosis, fearing plague upon the city, and had already been cremated. My grandfather, who had lived his entire life with his head held high, found himself unconsciously learning to bow it in this cramped capital. Let me take her ashes away. You locked her up here without loving her. Now that she is gone, let her come home. Father refused, saying that since she was the princess consort of Yen, the capital was her home. Grandfather reluctantly asked to see me once. Father shook his head again. Li Qiu is frail from illness, already fainted and unconscious. Furthermore, the child is most afraid of rough military men. It's better that the father-in-law does not visit. Father did this deliberately. He resented grandfather because, despite marrying my mother, grandfather still refused to support him in seizing the throne. Grandfather collapsed completely. The emperor had only allowed him 10 days away from Yenmen Pass. He slept and rested not at all, riding as fast as he could, yet in the end, he could not hold on to anything. He sat on horseback, weeping, riding back to Yenmen Pass, and was buffeted by wind the entire way, hiccuping continuously. Father treated this as a joke to tell by Jean and their daughter, Yi Mingzhu, making the two of them laugh with amusement. I could bear it no longer. I hate all of you to death. But before father's slap could land on my face, Nanny Cannot appeared, her little ruler landing with a crack on my palm. Young lady, watch your words. Young lady Cannot, I understood. There always had to be someone to bear the weight of the word cannot. After mother died, I was the unlucky child chosen to carry it. After the 49-day mourning period ended, father could not wait to elevate Bai Jin to the position of principal consort. Yi Mingzhu's status rose accordingly. She became the legitimate daughter of the Yen Wang manor. As for me, I drank bitter medicine bowl after bowl, yet grew weaker by the day. Rumors spread through the capital that my mother missed me too much and wanted to take me with her. Until one day, after court was dismissed, the emperor casually mentioned, "If the treatment is not working, bring her into the palace. I will heal her." From that day on, I began to recover. I knew the emperor himself had given me a lifeline, but it was merely a lifeline, nothing more. Not long after, my stepmother made a grand scene, beating drums and clanging gongs, inviting a high monk from Baimasi temple into the manor. The moment the monk saw me, he was startled. The young lady's fate is thin. She is unlikely to live long. Only by relying on others and living humbly can she find peace. I kept my face expressionless. Is that so? But you haven't even read my palm yet. My stepmother coughed violently nearby. Grand Master, you go too far. Then she had people present 10,000 taels of gold to the monk. He accepted only 1 ingot, then departed leisurely. Using my so-called ill fate as excuse, my stepmother demoted me to the status of a concubine's daughter. My position became deeply awkward. By rights, the emperor had granted me the title of Junju, Commandery Princess, at birth, out of respect for my mother. But Yi Mingzhu, to this day, had never even been remembered by the emperor. Yet after my stepmother became the new princess consort, Yi Mingzhu was elevated to legitimate daughter, while I, despite holding the title of commandery princess, was only given the treatment of a concubine's daughter. My stepmother always played the role of the virtuous, kind mother before outsiders. Licio, my dear, you must listen to what the Grand Master said. Only by living an ordinary life can you be safe. Mother only wants you to survive. And so she forbade me from reading or learning the arts of a cultivated lady, clearly intending to raise me as a worthless nobody. Meanwhile, Yimingzhu was the complete opposite. My stepmother hired the finest female tutors for her, cultivating her to be the most accomplished young woman in the capital. Outsiders saw my stepmother as a virtuous, devoted mother. Only those inside the Yan Wang manor knew that I lived a life worse than a dog. On the anniversary of my mother's death, I secretly burned paper money in the courtyard to offer to her spirit. Yimingzhu led people storming in, kicking over the brazier. Your birth mother is still alive and well. What are you burning offerings for? Are you cursing people to death? I was pinned to the ground, forced to watch as she directed her servants to destroy everything in the courtyard. The grape trellis my mother had built with her own hands was toppled. The swing my mother had tied for me was smashed to pieces. Finally, Yimingzhu found my mother's pear blossom spear. My eyes turned red. That spear once beheaded the Khan of Chuanrong. How dare you touch it? Yimingzhu laughed mockingly. So what? You're dead now. This is just a forgotten piece of junk in a storage room. I'll put it to better use. She had heard the outhouse cleaning pole in the eastern wing had just broken, and this spear happened to be the right length. I struggled frantically, but I was small and had little strength. The servants were ruthless. They nearly broke my bones. The pear blossom spear was seized, its handle bound to a filthy waste-collecting tool. Yimingzhu had me escorted to the eastern outhouse, where servants scooped a ladle of waste water and splashed it over me. The stench shot straight to my brain. I didn't dare open my mouth, terrified of swallowing the vile thing. Yimingzhu pointed at me and laughed. Bring paper and brush. I just learned to paint, and I must capture this extraordinary scene. Perhaps because I smelled too foul, the servants holding me loosened their grips slightly. I seized the chance and rammed straight into Yimingzhu with all my strength. She shrieked. I ignored the fists of the servants, holding her tightly, smearing all the filth on my body onto hers. Yimingzhu wept pitifully. When my stepmother heard the news, she had all the charcoal braziers and warm blankets taken out of my room, then looked at me with a gentle expression. Licio, dear, only those born under a difficult fate who endure more suffering can live longer. That night I shivered with cold. Nanny Cannot held her own brazier and said coldly, mockingly, and for the sake of a mere object, bringing such misery upon yourself. I couldn't help but speak up. That was no ordinary object. It was the only keepsake my mother left behind. Nanny Cannot look down at me from her height. You are a person. What do objects have to do with you? Attachments too deep. How can you ever advance far in life? From that day on, I began learning to be invisible. Even when Yimingzhu provoked me many times, I remained blank-faced and indifferent. Gradually, my stepmother and Yimingzhu found no amusement in it and stopped bothering with me. I seized the opportunity to learn to crawl through the dog hole in the wall. Each day before the roosters crowed, would sneak out and run to the Imperial Academy to eavesdrop on the teacher's lectures, the 4 books, the 5 classics, the 6 arts of a gentleman, laughable, entertaining, boastful nonsense. Whatever I encountered, I listened to. At first I understood nothing, but gradually I found it fascinating. My courage grew until I began sneaking into the Tsangshu pavilion to read in secret. One day, I accidentally knocked over a candle stand and the spark caught on a page of a book. I was frightened stiff, and just then, a hand reached out from behind me and smothered the flame. "Little one, be careful, don't burn that pretty face of yours." I thought there was no one in the Tsangshu pavilion. The sudden voice startled me. I turned around and saw a teacher dressed in black, smiling at me. I backed away cautiously. "Who are you?" He answered unhurriedly, "You've heard my lectures before, and you don't recognize me?" I stared blankly for a moment, then it hit me. "You are Xie Song?" The great name of Xie Song rang like thunder in my ears. He was a scholar, yet the current emperor treated him as a singular talent, allowing him free passage in and out of the palace, even granting him an imperial decree of unbounded speech. He could say whatever he wished, nothing forbidden. Once, at a banquet, the emperor himself had carved a piece of roasted venison and offered it to him. "Xie Song, how about a position in the court?" Xie Song replied without hesitation, "I am as timid as a mouse." "Your Majesty, I dare not enter the court." The emperor waved his carving knife in the air, laughing. "Who would dare bully you? I'll back you up." Xie Song cradled his wine jug, drunk as a stupor, barely coherent. "Then I dare even less." An emperor waving a knife that tastes blood with every swing. He set down his jug and fell asleep right there. The entire hall of officials went silent, not daring to utter a word. The emperor was quiet for a long moment, then burst out laughing. "Of all the court, only Xie Song alone is my true kindred spirit." Afterward, Xie Song entered the Imperial Academy as a teacher. I had indeed eavesdropped on a few of his lectures, but always from outside the window, never seeing his face clearly. Xie Song casually flipped through the book I had been reading. "Little one, whose family are you from?" I stayed silent. He didn't press either. "If you want to study, I can recommend you to the Imperial Academy." My eyes lit up slightly, then dimmed again. Xie Song saw my hesitation and asked why. I answered sadly, "I cannot let people at home find out." He thought for a moment. "Ah. So that's it." I expected him to probe further, but instead he simply handed me a token. "If you have time, come to the Tsangshu pavilion. I am willing to teach you." From then on, Xie Song spent 2 hours each day teaching me. He never asked my name, he only called me "little rascal." What he taught was broad and vast, from "heaven ordains nature, following nature is the way, cultivating the way is called education." He would drift to a story about a Board of Civil Affairs official who had just taken a young widow by force. From "all under heaven belongs to the king," he would veer to a warning: "If you ever travel beyond the Hallan Mountains, do not casually ask people for their names. That is lawless territory. And asking someone's name is like asking for their life." Occasionally I would sneak off to listen to other teachers, making Xie Song furious. "I'm teaching you already. Why do you need to listen to those others babble on?" I answered boldly, "Do not be picky, learn what you can, learn what is good." Those days stretched on for 2 full years. Finally, Xie Song said, "I can bring our lessons to an end." I looked at him half skeptically. Did he not want to teach me anymore because I had no money for tuition? He seemed to see through my thoughts, reached out and flicked my forehead. "This tiny head, how much can it hold? The more books you read, the narrower the mind becomes. You truly are a petty, narrow-hearted little rascal." On my way home, I kept turning his words over in my mind. So deep in thought, I accidentally walked into the ceremonial procession of the Crown Prince. The royal guards reacted instantly, swords drawn, pressing me to the ground. "Bold commoner, how dare you obstruct the Crown Prince's procession?" Just as I was frantically thinking of a response, my eyes accidentally met those of the Crown Prince. He was startled, then stepped down from his palanquin, extending his hand toward me. "Is this not Liqiu, little sister?" I blurted out without thinking, "No. I am the father of smallpox." The corner of the Crown Prince's eye twitched, but he suppressed his distaste and said gently, "Liqiu, are you frightened? Let me have this guard executed to set things right." The guard's eyes went wide, knocking his forehead frantically on the ground, begging for mercy. Just then, as if things weren't chaotic enough, Yi Mingzhu happened to pass by, wearing a newly tailored Sichuan silk dress in sapphire green, a gold hairpin topped with a pigeon egg-sized ruby. She glanced around. "Crown Prince, what a coincidence. Liqiu, why are you here?" I quietly rubbed my forehead. "Liqiu, you're done for, naturally." Yi Mingzhu had not wandered by coincidentally. She had arranged this chance encounter with the Crown Prince. Father didn't know about this. With the commotion so great, the Crown Prince ended up personally escorting both me and Yi Mingzhu home. When Father learned what had happened, he who always treated Yi Mingzhu as a precious gem, he flew into a rage. "This king's daughter will not be married to the Crown Prince. I was dominated by Yi Baichen all my life. Must my daughter also be oppressed by his son?" The logic was loose, but the reasoning wasn't entirely without merit, though those words were already somewhat disrespectful to the throne. Yi Mingzhu, however, was not agreeable. She wept and screamed, "But I like him. I only want to marry him. He will become emperor someday, then I will be empress." Before she could finish the sentence, a sharp crack rang out and the entire courtyard went silent. Yi Mingzhu clutched her face in disbelief, staring at the father who had always indulged her. "Go to your room and reflect. You are not to come out without my permission." Yi Mingzhu ran off in tears. I desperately wanted to perform a sisterly concern scene, weeping and chasing after her to comfort her. But sadly, Father had grabbed me by the collar, staring at me with icy eyes. "Are you also determined to marry the Crown Prince?" I was stunned for a moment before reacting. "Why, yes. Yes. That's right. What does Father think?" Father was so angry he almost laughed. "Lock her up." I was locked in a room for 3 days and 3 nights, given only one bowl of clear water each day. I knew this was certainly my stepmother's doing. She couldn't not know about Yi Mingzhu's feelings for the Crown Prince. Now that Yi Mingzhu was under house arrest, my stepmother would surely blame everything on me, and she thought I was also trying to attract the Crown Prince to turn the situation in my favor. So my stepmother decisively decided she would starve me to death. Therefore, I decided, if I was going to do it, I'd do it big. At midnight, while everyone was deep in sleep, I set my bedroom on fire. While everyone scrambled to put out the blaze, I crawled out through the dog hole. My mother had once taught me, without destruction, there is no creation. Nanny Cannot had once taught me, attachments too deep, you cannot advance far. Xia Song had once taught me, remaining forever within 4 walls, you cannot see the world. Very well. I would abandon the identity of Yan Wang's daughter. I no longer needed the title of Commandery Princess. From this day forward, the world would only know Liqiu, not Yi Liqiu. 1 month later, I finally arrived at Yanmen Pass, the place my mother had longed for day and night. By then, even I could no longer recognize myself as a young woman. My face was always smudged with layer upon layer of grime, my nose running freely and wiped on my sleeve until the fabric had hardened into stiff layers. The only thing I couldn't fake was my throat. So I always wrapped a scarf around my neck. Along the road, people had suspected I was a woman in disguise, but I no longer panicked. I shouted in a loud voice, "Who dares challenge me to a fight?" The other party immediately recoiled, muttering they were only joking. At the military recruitment camp, I overheard people discussing, "Heard the news? The daughter of Yan Wang, the child of Shen Pingxiang, is dead." Right, I heard the fire burned for 3 full days and nights without being extinguished. When it was finally out, only a charred skeleton remained. I immediately spat out all the water in my mouth. "Brothers, say that again, I didn't hear clearly." Just as I was still wondering whether I had accidentally burned someone to death, the scene ahead erupted into chaos. Lord Zhen Guogong had personally arrived at the recruitment camp. I had never met my grandfather before, but with one glance I recognized him. He and my mother looked too alike. The slightly upturned phoenix eyes, the tall straight nose, the lips always pressed tightly shut. As grandfather walked past me, I felt a pang in my heart and instinctively raised my hand. But the moment I did, grandfather actually reacted. He grabbed me with full force, hoisted me up, and slammed me straight down onto the ground. The impact made me see stars and brought my rational mind rushing back. Yi Liqiu no longer exists. If I revealed myself to grandfather, it would put him in an impossibly difficult position. Hiding me? That would be tantamount to harboring a fugitive, defiance of the throne. And I had not come here seeking protection. In that lightning flash instant, I made up my mind, would not reveal myself to grandfather. Grandfather looked down at me with open disdain. Where did this new recruit come from? Still weaned yet? The recruitment officer, a middle-aged man everyone called Old Hua, hurried over, wiping sweat. "Ah, this little one? Your lordship, don't let the small size fool you. This kid has a real talent." "Oh?" Lord Zhen Guogong looked at me with suspicion. I decided to demonstrate a little skill. I sniffed carefully. "Your lordship, this morning you ate wontons, then a beef flatbread halfway through, then drank a bowl of medicine. The smell seems to be medicine for a knife wound. Your clothes haven't been changed in at least 3 days. There's also a very faint smell of sulfur on them. If I guess correctly, there was a skirmish between 2 armies 3 days ago. Your lordship sustained a minor injury and is currently recuperating." Lord Zhen Guogong was beginning to show interest. What? Say it. Right, one shouldn't drink wine while recovering from wounds. Yet your lordship has secretly drunk at least half a jar. His lordship hadn't finished speaking before he clamped my mouth shut. "Lower your voice a little." Unfortunately, it was too late. The camp physician, Dr. Liu, had already charged over ferociously. "Do you know what it means to follow a doctor's orders? Still daring to drink wine behind my back? You're the lord of a great house, can't you have a shred of dignity? Get down here and receive your acupuncture." In the army under the Shen family, Dr. Liu was someone no one dared to provoke. Anyone who dared would receive the full force of his needles. Lord Shennan was chased 3 times around the camp tent by the doctor and his acupuncture needles. As for me, I was successfully enlisted as a new recruit in the Xuanji military camp. People said military life was bitter, but I found no place better. 3 solid meals a day, every meal filling you to the brim. Mornings there was a martial arts instructor teaching swordsmanship. Afternoons there was a civil tutor teaching letters. Every other day, Lord Jin Guogong himself lectured on military strategy. Even the sunset there was more beautiful than the capital by far. The days passed and I was tempered like steel, forged into an adult. The first time I went to the battlefield I was 12, I understood nothing. Just blindly chased after grandfather's horse. When the battle was won, I had no idea how we had won, just blankly smiling along with everyone. But by the time I was 20, I could chase the High General of Koryo and pursue him all the way to the border. I became the youngest commanding general in the Xuanji camp. At 22, in an otherwise unremarkable battle, I captured alive the petty prince of the Lusha kingdom and used him to trade for 2 fortified cities that had been seized. When the news reached the capital, the whole nation was shaken. The emperor specially sent an envoy to read an imperial decree. I was promoted to Grand General of Heroic Valor, when the imperial eunuch arrived to read the decree. The atmosphere in the camp was strangely tense. I hunched guiltily in a corner with my head down. The heir of Jin Guogong, Shenjue, glared at me. Why didn't you report your plan to his lordship first? Do you know what consequences a battlefield decision made without authorization could have? I answered obediently, because I had no plan to begin with. He was right in front of my face. Wouldn't it have been rude not to grab him when I had the chance? I wasn't telling the truth. Actually, I had long planned to use the petty prince of Lusha to exchange for the 2 cities, not out of thirst for glory, but because from childhood, the story my mother mentioned most often was, if I hadn't been tricked into returning to the capital to get married that year, I would have already taken back Xiangbei and Chidu. I had never given my mother a single gift. These 2 cities, consider them a belated birthday present for her. Shenjue kept muttering, reckless credit seeker, sooner or later this will bring disaster. Grandfather was nagged to the point of a headache. Child, stop talking, you're boring me to death. What young man doesn't want to prove himself? Back then. Pingxiang too. He stopped suddenly. The entire camp fell into silence. I couldn't help calling out softly, Uncle. Just then the tent flap was lifted and a palace eunuch stepped in. The servant arrives late. Shenjue still looked at me with suspicion. What did you just say? I quickly changed my voice. I said you are being completely unreasonable. The old man here wins a battle, and you're still blaming him? Is that not unreasonable? The eunuch surveyed everyone, then smiled brightly. Well now. This is General Liqiu, undaunted valor, decisive action, 100 battles, 100 victories, truly peerless. I felt dizzy. Your Excellence, could you breathe between words? Outside the tent, the eunuch's smile remained radiant as he hinted meaningfully. The frontier's future. Who holds it? Isn't it just up to His Majesty to say the word? General Liqiu, you understand. Of course I understood. He wanted me to be the blade in the emperor's hand, helping to scatter the military power of Lord Jin Guogong. That is indeed somewhat awkward for me. I fear my mother will come to settle accounts with me in the middle of the night. The eunuch dropped oblique hints for half a day before finally satisfied and leaving. The moment I turned back, Lord Jin Guogong was already standing outside the tent, come in." He gestured for me to sit across from him. He picked up a chess piece and placed it on the board. I said honestly, "I don't know how to play." He answered calmly, "Neither do I." "Then why is there always a chess set in the tent?" Grandfather continued arranging pieces. 3 black pieces forming a triangle. "Licio, I have always admired you, but I must admit, by following me, your future is limited." Grandfather explained that the court was divided into 2 factions. The emperor valued the civil, Yan Wang valued the military. Both wanted to pull the other down. Yan Wang held not only the late emperor's protective edict but also the support of more than half the imperial army. This was why the emperor had always tried to draw grandfather to his side, but grandfather had never responded. So the emperor had turned to cultivating his own military generals to oppose Yan Wang. The person the emperor had targeted was me, and I was the chess piece the emperor intended to use to break the stalemate. Grandfather looked me in the eye. Today His Majesty issued an edict summoning us to the capital to celebrate our merits. Word is that at the banquet, His Majesty will arrange a marriage for you with an imperial princess, to harness the strength of the frontier. All of us here are bound by the same fate, but once we enter the capital, it may well be that you live and I die. Whatever the outcome, remember, absolutely do not let the common people suffer." I picked up a chess piece. "Your lordship, please advise. Where should I place this piece of mine?" Grandfather closed his eyes and said nothing. After a long silence, the chess piece clicked down onto the board. "If you do not wish to be entangled in the game, then it is better to break the game altogether." For the journey to the capital, grandfather selected 100 escorts, but before they had even gone halfway, a thunderbolt of news spread across all of Dezhou. The second prince had staged a rebellion. Grandfather immediately decided, he and Shenjue, Dr. Lu, and Shen Nan would change into simple disguises and ride fast horses directly toward the capital, while I led Vice General Wang Mantu and a roundabout route to mobilize troops. By the time our forces gathered 50,000 elite soldiers and arrived outside the capital, the roads were already choked with refugees fleeing the chaos. The local officials were paralyzed with indecision, not because they didn't know what to do, but because they were weighing whether saving the emperor would make them heroes, or whether, if the emperor died and the second prince took the throne, they would be the first to be dealt with. Grandfather eventually couldn't stand it and sent them away to distribute porridge to the refugees. Grandfather called us all into the tent to plan. Shenjue slapped a map onto the table. The entire upper capital was under strict lockdown, sealed like an iron barrel. "This is the most recent map," Shenjue said. "It includes troop deployments around all 4 city gates." Despite the dire situation, I couldn't help but remark, "This map is beautifully drawn, the troop arrangements, terrain features, village distributions, all extremely clear." Grandfather studied me with suspicion. "Can this map be trusted? Doesn't the timing seem too convenient?" Only then did I learn that on the road, grandfather and Shenjue had picked up 2 strangers, a scholar named Dongxi, and a monk named Bush. Shenjue had his reasons. If they are truly talented, we might as well have them under our watch. If they have ulterior motives, better to keep them where we can see them. The second prince had apparently been planning this rebellion for a very long time. The 4 gates were guarded tightly, and we had no idea where the emperor and the court were being held. If we attacked recklessly, the second prince might kill everyone out of desperation. While we were at an impasse, a soldier rushed in to report that the second prince had sent an envoy for negotiations. In that instant, a plan formed in my mind. Wang Manta went to check whether the river route was sealed off. That night, I and Wang Mantu led a small squad and silently entered the city through the underground drainage system. Wang Mantu shivered with cold but was still curious. General Liqiu, how did you know this river connects directly to the underground drainage canal? How else would I know, from growing up playing here, hiding here and there inside the city? The underground drainage was extremely narrow. Naturally a large army couldn't squeeze through, and the noise would be too great, easily detected. Anyone caught down there with a bag of explosives would have us all singing, bones scattered on hen leaf, sun rises, bones crumble, fall again, you die once, you cannot return. That afternoon, Shenjue pulled the negotiation envoy aside for a thorough heart-to-heart. Scholar Dongxi also participated. I wasn't present, but word was that between the two of them their performance was so convincing the envoy almost swore a blood oath of brotherhood on the spot. They also extracted useful intelligence. The emperor and all the civil and military officials were being held in the Zhaoyang Hall, and explosives had been hidden inside. This was why the second prince dared not attack rashly. He wanted to force the emperor to abdicate voluntarily, and he needed it to look willing. If labeled as a patricide and regicide, how could he ever win the people's hearts? Everything went according to plan, better than expected, in fact. Two skilled fighters silently crept into the second prince's camp, changed into enemy uniforms, and at the midnight drum signal, the grain and fodder depot in the camp suddenly burst into flames. In an instant, shouts, drums, cymbals, and even fireworks erupted in the chaos. Wang Manta leapt onto the city wall, holding a severed and blood-soaked head, roaring, "The rebel Yi Lu has been executed. Lay down your arms and surrender." While the rebel soldiers were in panic, a figure came swaggering and snarling out of an inconspicuous barracks tent, muttering and ranting, "This prince's fortune and longevity are boundless." Before he could finish his sentence, I'd already slid around behind him and delivered a palm strike, knocking him unconscious. Then I bellowed, "How dare you impersonate the second prince? You have enormous guts." In truth, it wasn't even necessary, because the surrounding noise was so loud no one could hear the second prince's feeble protests anyway. The captain of the second prince's guard, a fellow called Lu Xiaolu, in the chaos raised his hand and cried, "Everyone hold steady. Word is that those who surrender will not be killed. Hurry, open the gates and welcome Lord Jin Guogong in to earn your pardon." Then he threw down his own spear and charged screaming toward the gate. The confused soldiers, seeing someone take the lead, followed one after another. Some even tried to sprint ahead to claim the first credit. The handful of officers who tried to reverse the tide were all knocked unconscious by me. The entire rebel army's morale collapsed in an instant. I smiled to myself. In war, once one person throws down their weapon, very quickly a second follows. Once morale is broken, victory and defeat are decided. Grandfather arrived to mop up the remainder. The commander of the Imperial Forest Guard, one of the Emperor's most trusted men, arrived and clasped his hands politely. "Lord Jin Guogong, you have labored greatly." The Emperor, in his wisdom, specially dispatched me to assist. Everyone performed their salutes. From behind came Shenjue's voice calling out, "Master Bush. Sir Dongxi. Over here." I turned with curiosity, wanting to see who could have such an intriguing pair of names. But just then, a very faint breeze brushed the tip of my nose. I froze. Something was wrong. A faint, musty smell drifted from the grove of trees nearby. I went on alert immediately, and in the next instant, the ground shook violently. From the trees came the crashing of leaves being thrust aside, along with heavy, thundering footsteps. Grandfather roared, "Shields up!" Almost simultaneously, I charged toward grandfather, shouting, "Look out, run!" And then two enormous elephants erupted from the trees, barreling straight toward grandfather. Grandfather reacted with lightning speed, spurring his horse to dodge, but unfortunately, the horse had been frightened stiff and couldn't move. Shinjoi almost lost his mind, "Father," but he was too far away to help in time. In that split second, grandfather was cornered. The two armored elephants raised their long trunks and brought them crashing down with terrible force. In the critical moment, I grabbed a long spear and charged recklessly, latching onto one of the elephants. Using the momentum, I swung up onto its back and drove the spear with all my strength into the back of its head. The elephant writhed and thrashed, flinging me away, then staggered and collapsed dead on the spot. Before I could even marvel at my own skill, a searing pain tore through me. The sharp tusk of the remaining elephant pierced straight through my left chest, nearly lifting me off the ground. The next moment I was hurled into the air. Grandfather and Shinjoi combined forces to bring down the second elephant, and then I fell into a pair of slender but warm arms. Someone caught me, but I no longer had the strength to turn and see who it was. I managed only to say, with extreme politeness, "Thank you." I also privately congratulated myself, but the person holding me snapped angrily, "Be quiet." Then everything became chaotic. I was carried back to the tent, grandfather, Shinjoi, and Dr. Lu all crammed inside the small canvas tent, putting me under enormous pressure. Shinjoi was uncharacteristically kind, telling Dr. Lu, "The commander of the Imperial Forest Guard has returned to the palace to report. He said if any rare medicines are needed, say the word and he will have them delivered." Then he reached out to help remove my coat. "Quick, take off the coat and treat the wound. What are you fainting about?" I screamed, "Hero!" "Wait!" Almost simultaneously, a hand holding a folded fan reached out from behind me and snapped down on Shinjoi's wrist. A familiar voice spoke, "Release your paw." "Where is Dr. Lu's female apprentice?" At those words, the tent fell instantly silent. Grandfather finally waved his hand and called her over. "Stop the bleeding first." I sighed in relief, and then the world went dark. When I came to, my wound had been carefully bandaged. A delicate-looking young girl was boiling medicine nearby. When she saw me open my eyes, she immediately cheered with delight. "Ah, you're awake. Let me go call my master." I remembered her name was Muhi, and I smiled in thanks. The moment Muhi left, outside the tent came a long argument. "That wretched scholar. The crisis in the capital has been resolved. Why won't you leave quickly?" "Monk, you go first. I need to stay a little longer." "Stay for what?" "Still staying?" The words were cut off. Then the tent flap softly stirred. "Little rascal, can I come in?" My heart stopped for a beat. I blurted out, "Master." The tent flap rose, and a tall, graceful silhouette stood backlit in the doorway. Xia Song's face had barely changed at all. 5 years, the same familiar sight. I was so moved I stumbled over my words. "Master, why are you here?" "I heard you left the capital years ago. Where have you been all this time?" "I've been to many places. I once went beyond the Hallan Mountains. It truly was just as you described." My gaze fell on his bandaged arm. Master, you're injured. And then I suddenly understood. In the moment the elephant flung me, it was Xie Song who had caught me. But he was just a scholar. He had never trained in martial arts, had no extraordinary strength. So when he caught me, he fell too, and was wounded. I felt a pang of guilt. Master, I'm sorry, it's all my fault. A disgruntled voice cut in, knowing that is good enough. Green hills still standing, blue waters still flowing, henceforth parted in this world. From now on, let us not meet again. Then a monk barged in between me and Xie Song, using his rear end to push him out of the way. I frowned. It turned out the scholar Shinjue had picked up on the road was none other than Xie Song, and the monk was the very same high monk who had read my fortune all those years ago. I looked at Monk Bush warily, and clearly he felt no goodwill toward me either, single-mindedly trying to pull Xie Song away. Before I could ask anything further, Grandfather, Shinjue, and Dr. Lu entered. Grandfather narrowed his eyes at me. Though I am grateful you saved me, I must ask clearly, who are you? And why did you disguise yourself as a man and sneak into the Xuanji camp? Before I could answer, Monk Bush jeered, isn't this the tradition of the Shin family? You people never fear death. I told you already, the young lady's fate is thin, she is unlikely to live long. Only by relying on others and living humbly can she find peace. You wouldn't listen, would you? The words fell, and all four walls went silent. Grandfather stared at me, his expression beyond belief, his lips trembling, yet still he held his doubts. He was afraid this was an enemy scheme. Afraid it was all a dream. After a long silence, I smiled gently at Grandfather. That year when Mother passed, you rushed back to the capital. Father wouldn't let you see me. You stood outside the manor walls and sang for me. The armor gleams, the war banners fly, a mighty army ablaze with fire, they rout the enemy and bring glory home. You sang many times until your voice was hoarse and you called out, Child, can you hear? Answer me. In the end, before you left, you and your son threw many silver ingots around the manor walls, hoping some servant might pick them up and treat me a little better. But back then I was very ill and truly had no strength to answer you. Grandfather, you can't sing at all. Grandfather said nothing. He stared blankly at me for a long moment, then suddenly bent forward and half knelt on the ground, breathing in short, heaving gasps. Uncle, that uncle of mine, who had always been cold and distant, now for the first time showed an awkward, flustered expression. He wanted to pat my head but was so nervous he had to wipe his hands on his robe. Then he decided his robe was dirty, searched through Dr. Lu's medicine chest for medicinal wine to clean his hands, wiping and wiping until he nearly wore the skin off, and only when he felt clean enough did he carefully place his hand on my head and gently stroke it a few times. Hair as thick and coarse as your mother's. Temperament not much different either. All these years, why didn't you say a word to us? Though Grandfather and I are not much, we could at least have protected you. Before he even finished, this general who had never wept in his life suddenly burst into tears, weeping for Yi Liqiu, whom he had thought was dead and gone, now miraculously found, and weeping for Shen Pingxiang, now forever separated by the boundary of life and death. Under Grandfather's and Uncle's constant urging, Dr. Lu's precious medicines were used without restraint on me. My wounds healed rapidly, and I even gained weight at an astonishing pace. Uncle had found a new target to nag constantly. Why aren't you wearing more clothes? The weather changes easily, you'll catch cold easily. What's this, you only had 5 meals today? Not enough, you have to add a midnight snack. I couldn't help remarking, Uncle, I actually prefer the arrogant, disagreeable way you used to treat me. Before he could react, I had already slipped away, leaving him behind stamping his feet in frustration. When my wounds were nearly healed, the capital gradually recovered as well. Grandfather ordered the 50,000 elite soldiers to return to camp, keeping only the 100 who had come originally, plus Sieh Song and Monk Bush. Only then did the emperor finally propose a celebratory banquet, asking grandfather to bring everyone into the city. Everyone tacitly understood, this emperor of ours trusted no one. With 5,000 elite soldiers still outside the walls, how could he sleep soundly? What if grandfather suddenly took the fancy to lead his troops into the city and cut his head off? The emperor only relaxed once the main army had withdrawn. On the day we entered the city, Sieh Song stood before the gates, head slightly raised, looking up at the walls of the capital. I walked up beside him and tilted my head. How does it feel, returning here, master? Overcome with emotion, want to compose a verse? Sieh Song smiled at me. But from that smile I felt something bitter. I withdrew my own smile. Master, what's wrong? Sieh Song was silent for a moment, then spoke. Monk Bush, though somewhat obnoxious, reads fortunes with uncanny accuracy. I said nothing. I knew well, a monk who could predict 3 years of drought for all of Dezhou could not be a fraud. Sieh Song's voice wavered slightly. Is it not possible to simply not go? I half-jokingly tried to lighten the mood. What? Am I a comet of Dezhou? Sieh Song stared at me intently. Last night, Monk Bush compared your horoscope against the star formations. Venus crosses the heavens. Blades and war rise in turmoil. But one spear breaks 10,000 armies. The spear breaks and fate ends. Knowing this, you still want to go? I had already reached the city gate. I turned to look at Sieh Song. Go, why not? One person in exchange for 10,000, that's a worthy trade. Master, do you remember, the last day of lessons, what was the final thing you taught me? Sieh Song's memory was excellent, he needed only a moment's thought to recall it. He laughed softly. I truly regret teaching you that lesson. Before he finished, he had already stepped forward to my side. I don't know if it was an illusion, but in that moment of stepping forward, I seemed to sense a flicker of hesitation and a sigh from him, yet when I looked up, his face wore only its usual calm, unbothered smile. He took a half-step through the gate, turned his head, and lightly tugged at my sleeve. I'll go with you. In that hazy instant, I suddenly recalled the final lesson Sieh Song had once taught me. The long night is hard to brighten. Light the lamp to continue the day. The death of the second prince seemed to cast no shadow at all over the victory banquet. The emperor was in excellent spirits, and when he saw Sieh Song, he grew even merrier. Sieh Song, didn't you say you'd never return to the capital? Why have you come back? Sieh Song raised an eyebrow. The wine in the capital is better. Monk Bush had also followed everyone into the city. At those words, he snorted coldly, Amitabha. At the banquet, I ran into father, my stepmother, and Yi Mingzhu. Father didn't recognize me. Unusually, he walked up to pour wine for me, a toast to the general. Truly, heroes rise young. Mingzhu, go toast the general. Yi Mingzhu was unwilling, glancing sideways at the crown prince. All these years she'd been playing the role of a devoted fool. Father had beaten and scolded her, yet she remained fixed on marrying the crown prince. As a result, though she was now in her 20s, she was still unbetrothed. Under father's insistent urging, Yi Mingzhu pouted and raised her cup. "General, may you have 10,000 victories." Those words, toasting 10,000 victories, and the buried memories, the image of Yi Mingzhu drenched in wastewater suddenly surfaced in my mind. It seemed after all these years, I could still smell that fragrant aroma. So right there at the banquet, in front of all watching eyes, I couldn't help dry retching, though I'd eaten nothing and brought nothing up. But wasn't this still a kind of fond reminiscing? Yi Mingzhu's face immediately drained to green-white. Xia Song reacted the fastest, immediately deflecting. "Miss Yi, please don't take offense. The general is still not fully recovered from his wounds. It has nothing to do with any dislike of Miss Yi." In the midst of everything, I could only raise a thumb in his direction. "Master, you are brilliant. In the next life, I'll still follow you." The emperor watched the spectacle gleefully and suddenly pointed at Yan Wang, laughing. "Huang Di, I told you already, no sons and still running around stirring up trouble. Were you planning to wait until I was dead to seize the throne? And only then have children?" Yan Wang gritted his teeth. "Your subject brother would not dare." The emperor didn't press further but turned to me. "General Liqiu, how is your wound now? You made the greatest contribution this time. What reward do you wish?" Before I could open my mouth, the emperor waved his hand. "That's right, I have a daughter. Would you like her?" I nearly choked on my wine. Everyone knew, the reigning emperor had 2 princes and 1 princess. The second prince had staged a rebellion and was given a cup of poison by the crown prince. Now only 1 son and 1 daughter remained. The princess had been granted the title Biyuan, silent, because she had been born both deaf and mute, and the emperor had bestowed upon her that unusual title. Looking at me, nearly drowning in wine, the emperor laughed heartily. "Fair enough, General Liqiu, young and gifted and uniquely talented, marrying a deaf-mute princess as official wife would be a bit much." "Wait now." Before he finished the word "wait," I had already hastily clasped my hands. "Your Majesty, could you also grant your subject an imperial token of immunity from death?" All eyes turned toward me. The emperor stroked his chin, his gaze full of deep, unfathomable meaning. "Oh?" I immediately knelt upright in the middle of the golden throne hall. "If your Majesty wishes to reward your subject does have one earnest request." The emperor burst out laughing. "Why does beloved general need to perform such a grand ceremony? Stand up and speak. As long as it is not my throne, anything else is possible." I did not stand. I kowtowed deeply 3 times, 9 full prostrations, then spoke word by word, clearly. "Your subject, female, Yi Liqiu, beseeches your imperial uncle to investigate the true cause of death of mother consort Shen Pingxiang." The entire golden throne hall erupted with murmuring. Father leapt to his feet, sending the wine table before him crashing over, wine splashing everywhere. "You are Liqiu?" Yi Mingzhu looked at me, then at father, her face pale with shock, one hand covering her mouth. Lady Bai Jin dropped her wine cup. My gaze swept across to her and locked there. After the initial shock, the emperor looked at me with interest. "Liqiu, you truly look like Pingxiang." Yan Wang strode to my side and hissed in a low voice. "What nonsense is this? Mother consort died of illness. What is there to investigate?" I looked at him coldly. If mother consort died only of illness, then what is father afraid of? Just then, Bai Jin pressed her handkerchief to her eyes, her voice weak. "Liqiu, you've certainly suffered much these past years. Missing your birth mother is understandable. Father never forbade you from investigating. But hiding your identity, disguising as a man, sneaking into the Xuanji camp, that is the crime of deceiving the emperor. Why not use your battlefield merits to exchange for an imperial favor? Let merit and fault cancel each other. Consider the matter closed. The admiral of Ying Prefecture, Xiao Yan, a man fiercely loyal to Yan Wang, immediately spoke up. Deceiving the emperor is a crime punishable by immediate beheading. And a great many others followed suit, clamoring to punish me. Grandfather couldn't hold back any longer and spoke, but he had never aligned with any faction, so almost no one from either camp rallied to support him. The Crown Prince's party was still observing, not yet speaking. In an instant, the great hall erupted with cries calling for my punishment. Just then, a cold laugh rang out from behind. The emperor immediately turned. "Do you have something to say?" Xie Song was slowly swirling his jade wine cup. "I only find it amusing. From the moment Yi Liqiu entered the capital until she revealed her identity, not a few courtiers came to shake her hand and call her a hero. Now that they know she is a woman, they immediately turn their backs. Truly entertaining. Though I am of little talent, I have an excellent memory. Let me try to recall, who exactly were the ones who came seeking her out." The Golden Throne Hall fell deathly silent. No one dared to speak, for if they did, it would be tantamount to admitting they had tried to forge factions and alliances. Xie Song walked slowly through the rows of officials, eyes narrowed as he studied each face as if truly deep in recollection. The emperor laughed loudly. "Enough, don't frighten my beloved ministers anymore. In your view, is this a crime of deceiving the emperor?" Xie Song bowed. "It may be punishable, but not for petty men to decide." Yi Liqiu first recovered Xiangbei and Chidu, then relieved the siege of the capital. Her exploits are brilliant, only your majesty has the standing to pass judgment on her. It would be your majesty's wise and enlightened grace not to chill the hearts of generals and soldiers. The emperor laughed loudly. "Your mouth truly is silver. I've never seen you flatter me even once. Now you open your mouth on behalf of Liqiu. Has your heart been moved?" My heart beat one beat faster. I turned to look at him. Xie Song remained composed as ever, answering calmly. "I once taught her. She is merely a student of mine." In the end, the emperor agreed to investigate the true cause of mother consort Shen Pingxiang's death. The crown prince himself volunteered to handle the case. After the victory banquet ended, Yi Mingzhu immediately said cheerfully, "Wonderful. Father is the crown prince brothers. His brother will certainly give us justice." Father stared at her foolish expression and was speechless, furiously ordering, "Shut your mouth." Then struggling to compose a kind expression, "Liqiu, all these years without word from you, father was very worried. True to Pingxiang's daughter, truly as bold as any man. I paid him no attention at all. I could see he only wanted to pull me to his side because I had a promising future." Unexpectedly, Yi Mingzhu looked at me with contempt and muttered, "Everyone knows Shen Pingxiang was unchaste before her wedding. What kind of woman like that is worth remembering?" My footstep froze. I raised my hand and slapped her across the face. "Ah, Yi Liqiu, you dare hit me? I'm the legitimate daughter of the Yan Wang manor now. Fortunately, both father and my stepmother now feared me. No one spoke up to defend Yi Mingzhu." My gaze fell on the gold hairpin set with rubies in Yi Mingzhu's hair. Without hesitation, I coldly yanked it out. you are worthy to wear what belongs to mother consort. Back then, mother had loved this gold hairpin most of all. Yi Mingzhu's long hair tumbled down. She couldn't bear it and grabbed by Jin's sleeve, complaining, "Stepmother, look, she took my hairpin." Bai Jin started to speak, but father had already lost patience, barking, "The dowry Pingxiang left behind naturally belongs to Li Qiu. If you have time tomorrow, you can return to the manor to take inventory." The next morning, just as I was about to return to the Yan Wang manor to reclaim the dowry, an imperial eunuch rushed up. General Yi, His Majesty summons you to court." I was baffled. Hadn't I just attended court yesterday? On the way, the little eunuch Xiao Zhenzi chattered excitedly about what had happened. Apparently the moment court opened, the emperor had craned his neck and cried, "Where is Yi Liqiu? Why has the third-rank Grand General not attended court?" The ministers looked at each other, hurriedly sending someone to summon me. By the time I rushed over panting, the emperor had already waved his hand. "All right, that's enough, court dismissed." I felt as if I were being toyed with. A moment later, the emperor added, "Li Qiu, stay. Come walk with me in the royal flower garden." I instinctively looked toward grandfather, but unfortunately, grandfather's gifts were all in martial prowess, and his intelligence was extremely limited. He was even more clueless than me, mouth hanging open, staring fixedly at the emperor, not even recognizing my desperate look for help. Uneasily, I followed the emperor to the royal flower garden. He first fed the koi, then admired the flowers, and finally pretended to be casual. "Over the years, has your mother ever come to you in dreams?" I nodded honestly, "Often. She even tucks my blanket in for me." "Then has she ever mentioned me?" "Never." The emperor let out a soft laugh. "You are so honest. Don't you know how to say a few pleasing words to make me happy? If I were pleased, I might give you quite a few treasures, you know." Then, as if on a whim, he took me somewhere. We walked for a very long time, nearly until sundown, before arriving. "This is the Imperial Mausoleum. 100 years from now, I will be buried here." The emperor led me inside the newly built mausoleum. "Look, this is where I will lie. And beside me will be a place for your mother's ashes. I know Pingxiang still resents me. But no matter, once we are in the underworld, I will admit my faults and soothe her properly." His fingers drifted over the grave goods, a phoenix crown worn only by an empress. The night luminous pearl tribute by the eastern sea, a coral tree as tall as a person, treasures beyond counting as if they were trivial things. And there too was the pear blossom spear that Yi Mingzhu had once taken away. The emperor gently stroked the tip of the spear. "All of these are for her. Do you think, will Pingxiang forgive me?" I did not answer, partly out of slight disgust, partly because my eyes had stopped on the half-piece of jade pendant at the emperor's waist. The jade's tassel cord was old and worn, and the jade itself was not of the highest quality, yet His Majesty always kept it close. When I returned to the manor to reclaim the dowry, I arranged for Wang Mantu and Lu Xiaojiu to take inventory. Both of them had lived more than 20 years without ever taking such a major test. They were like soldiers facing their greatest enemy. A pair of Qingxuan porcelain from the Song dynasty? Are you an idiot? Even if you can't tell the porcelain, can't you at least tell the color? This one is pink. Oh, let me find it again. You're going to smash General's dowry and then you're really dead. After the General is married, little Joe, you'll have to follow as part of the wedding escort." I could hear the chaos outside, Wang Mantu's roaring, Lu Xiaojiu stammering apologies, Yi Mingzhu's crying and wailing that nobody should move her things. I shook my head and kept looking. Not long after, the Crown Prince's voice rang out, "Sister Liqiu, what are you looking for?" My hand paused. I turned around without expression. Nothing, just looking at Mother Consort's keepsakes. The Crown Prince seemed to want to offer a few words of comfort but was interrupted by Yi Mingzhu. "Crown Prince brother, you came to find me? Why didn't you come to my courtyard?" "Yi Liqiu, here you are again." I was too lazy to get involved in their drama. Seeing the inventory was complete, I had the things taken away. Then clasped my hands. "Forgive me, His Majesty has ordered me to train new recruits. I must go to camp." I moved to make a quick exit, but the Crown Prince's eyes suddenly lit up. "You are skilled in riding and archery too. May I visit to observe?" Yi Mingzhu, as always, immediately pushed her way in and demanded to come along. On the way there, she even whispered to me, "The position of Crown Princess, I must have it." I was truly at a loss for words. Nobody is competing with you for that piece of dung, understand? At the training camp, the Crown Prince rolled up his sleeves and wanted to show off, but within less than one incense stick of time, he had deployed the tactic of coughing. Actually, I only know a little about riding and archery myself. I answered blandly. On the ground were nothing but broken arrows. The rabbit used as a target continued calmly grazing. The Crown Prince spent the entire session and couldn't hit a single rabbit's fur. The soldiers, though silent, had useless, useless, useless written clearly in their eyes. Finally, the Crown Prince's face flushed red with fury. He charged at the rabbit with his bare hands, and the rabbit kicked him square in the face. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to Love Stories with Lisa for more stories. Thank you so much.